Before I start, I'm going to briefly describe the house this happened in. There's also a small encounter before this other one happened that I'll add. When these encounters happened, I was around 21 and renting with my older brother, his girlfriend, and 2 other guys that are close friends of both the brother I was living with and my second eldest. The house we are renting was a pretty large 2-story that had 2 massive tiled living rooms, one upstairs and one downstairs. Upstairs had 2 staircases, one in the middle and one at the front door. One led to the living room downstairs and one to the garage. Our kitchen was upstairs, toward the back of the house near my bedroom. We had 2 balconies, one near our kitchen overlooking the backyard and in the distance the city, and one at the front of our house in the living room. Downstairs had the living room that led into our garage, into our laundry, which led to a balcony outside with a ramp to the fenced-off pool area. It also had a toilet, bathroom, and toward the front of the house, through the garage, was a locked storage room and bedroom up a small hallway. Moving to the first encounter. All my housemates were out this night, 3 at a work function, and 1 decided to go drinking with mates in the city, so I was home alone. This was a little out of the norm, as we were mostly gamers and even had a sick 4 PC setup in the living room. But I am the most antisocial out of the housemates, so I was a-okay with playing games and heading to bed at 2 a.m. or some other ungodly hour. With me, gaming and coffee go hand in hand, so in between games of CS, I decided to go to the kitchen and boil the kettle. As it was heating up, I heard the doorknob downstairs violently shake, as if someone was trying to get in. My mind instantly jumped to the conclusion my housemate that went to the city was locked out. I quickly gave a yell. "Hold up, mate, I'm coming down." I ran downstairs, turned on the light, and opened the door. No one was there. I gave a confused, "Hello?" to which there was no answer, and no movement. So I closed the door, locked it, went back upstairs and continued making myself a coffee. Later on, when the housemate I thought was locked out came home, I asked him about it, and he said it wasn't him, which I kinda knew already, but just confirming that he didn't try to drop back in for something. The next few months were quiet, and we were admittedly pretty sloppy with leaving doors unlocked. So really, anyone could have come in and gone while we were sleeping, and we'd be none the wiser, unless we were awake. Which leads me into the next encounter I had. The footy was on, and my brother loves it, so he goes out and gets an aerial cable. He comes home and realizes that having one end in the TV and one out in the front balcony gives us perfect reception. So we watch the footy with no trouble and forget the cord is laying out there, with the door slightly open. I'm a bit of a nut when it comes to bugs, so when I realized a couple days later, I took the cable inside and closed the door, but forgot to lock it. It must have just been a day or so later. I was again playing CS, and I saw the curtains next to me start moving. My computer setup was directly behind to the sliding door to the balcony, with curtains covering halfway and the entrance being directly behind me. A bit further down me was one of my housemates' rooms, where he was sleeping. The curtains were moving for maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and while I knew they were, I wasn't really reacting to it, like it was out of the norm. At the start of one of my rounds, I had been taken out pretty quickly, so the next minute I was just watching my teammates do their thing, which was a little boring. This is where I noticed my curtains start moving more violently, so I quickly took the right earpiece of my headset off. This is where I heard, not wind, but something else moving the curtains, so I get chills. And looked behind me to see someone starting to stand up behind my computer chair. My housemate that was in the room behind me had a blue shirt, and so did this intruder. So my first instinct was that it was him trying to scare me. So I quickly jump up and say something to the effect, "Ha! Nice try, man." The intruder instantly turns around, before I can even catch a glimpse of his face, and bails out of the balcony, onto my brother's car and down the street. I maybe realized what happened after a good 10 to 15 seconds, quickly close the door, lock it, call the cops, and make a coffee. The next few days, I ran through maybe 1,000 times how things that night could have gone differently. Both nights, really. If it had been someone else, or they had the courage to go at me instead of run, I probably wouldn't have been in the mindset to really grasp the nature of the situation. And while the second intruder ran when I turned around, what was he planning on doing? If he wanted to sneak past me, he could have, by going towards my housemate's room and walking down the hallway, but instead creeps towards me. I have considered he was there to just rob us, but it raises the question why he try his luck at the one house on the street that has lights on inside, and keep committing to it upon realizing someone is awake near his entry point. I'll never know what his intentions were, and while that area isn't known for assaults or murders, turning around at that moment may have saved me from injury, or worse. So I live in a pretty rural area in England. There's one fairly small city nearby, and so since everything is so sparse, people tend to be quite friendly and welcoming, and people do things that, in large cities or populated areas, you would never get away with. For example, I often leave my front door unlocked at night, or my bike unlocked on my lawn. It's a trustworthy place, and although crime is present, it's definitely not a big issue. I just turned 18, but I think at the time of this story, I was still 17. I'm also a dude, and so stuff like this doesn't usually happen to me. One day, I was chilling at the bus stop on my way into the city center, where I walk about 10 minutes to college. I had only just gotten there, and it must have been about 11 a.m., so there wasn't any rush or any cars around or anything. After a few minutes, a car pulls up to the bus stop where I'm standing and rolls down the window. I didn't think that was weird. I often get asked for directions around where I live, so I assumed this is what they wanted. I see it's a small, but very raggedy and dirty old lady driving the car, and she's alone. Her car smells a bit weird, as if she'd just been driving through a swamp, but the smell was coming from the inside. I say hey and ask her if she needs anything, and she tells me she's now going to the city and asked if I need a ride. I thought that this was really odd, but I wasn't threatened, me being a healthy and semi-tall 17-year-old guy and her being a tiny old lady. I remember not wanting to show how weird this all was out of respect, so I just politely said, "No thanks, the bus will be here soon anyway, but thank you." This is where things got a little weird, because she begins persisting and getting visibly angry. She says again that I should get in the car, and once again, I just simply say no, expecting her to drive away. I begin to think that maybe this lady had some kind of mental issues due to her raggedy look and weird mannerisms. At this point, she's kind of just staring at me, kind of how you look at something when you're trying to process why it's happening, as if she's expecting me to just get in her car. I say once more, trying to be more aggressive, that I don't want to ride. She looks as though she's going to get out of the car for a second, but in all of the fuss, I didn't even notice the bus approaching down the long stretch of road. She seems to notice it coming too, and simply drives away, seemingly offended that I didn't get in the car. I got on the bus and just forget about the whole interaction. I remember thinking afterwards if I knew this woman, or if she might be friends with my mom, but I'm certain I had never seen her before. I'd certainly remember her strange rough look and bad smell. I haven't seen her around my area ever since. TLDR. A strange old lady offered me a lift and acted offended when I didn't get in her car. Weirded me out. So this is one of the oddest things I've ever witnessed, and although I wasn't this weirdo's target, it was still awfully creepy to see. I was 16 and on a road trip to Florida with my best friend Cal and my parents. We decided to stop over at a cheap motel in West Virginia to sleep for the night. We get there at about 10 p.m., and being two teenage girls who'd been sitting in a car for the last day, we were still wound up. We explored, running into this group of guys with thick southern accents. They tried their hand at awkward teenage flirting, before giving up. I will never forget Cal's excuse for not giving her number. She told them she'd accidentally microwaved her phone last month. So, we just parted ways knowing they were normal, albeit awkward teenage boys. Cal and I kept exploring the hotel's floors, before deciding to race each other down the first floor's main hallway, sort of right next to the lobby. As we're laughing and speeding down this hallway, we run past this room with the door wide open, and since I was running at full speed, all I saw was a bunch of shiny things all over the floor, in front of and in the doorway, and a big blobby blur in the middle of it all. We get to the end of the hallway and ask each other what the hell that was. We sneak back slow and peer around the corner, and in the doorway of this room, there's this really obese man lying on his stomach with his chin resting on his hands, like he's trying to be cute. And all around him he's got silverware and tiny metal trinkets laid out. When he noticed us, he smiled weirdly, but didn't move anything besides his torso to face us a little better. We sprint back to my parents' room, but they're out getting food, so we're alone. We freak out / make fun of the situation for like 15 minutes, then decide to go back down. On the stairway from the second floor, we run into the same group of boys from earlier. One of them asks if we saw the same weird guy down there, and when we say yeah, the guys start freaking out. One of the kids tells us that his little brother, not sure how old, had been walking down the hallway from their room on the other end of the first floor to the vending machines, and that weird guy called out and stopped him, asked him if he wanted to come in his room, and offered him one of his weird trinkets. The kid had the good sense to say, no freaking thanks. But what the hell was that guy trying to get a kid in his room for? I think the hotel manager eventually stepped in and made the guy close his door. I hope the kid's parents complained and/or called the cops. I was too young to even realize how messed up that was. So to make light of it, Cal and I nicknamed the guy the Wiggling West Virginia Spoon Man. Made for a really wild story that no one believed when we got back to school after break.